Hello students, welcome to week 4 for COM 425 Organizational Communication. We're at the midterm point in this course, and this week we are covering content related to the decision-making process in organizational communication. So the chapters you read will cover significant information related to the processes that required effective decision-making from a communication standpoint within organizations. You'll see that we're reading chapter 8. We're watching 4 videos related to the rational model of decision-making, as well as symbolic convergence theory and groupthink theory, which are valid theories that are used within the course reading this week, as well as completing discussion board number 4, which is due on Friday, with our reply post due on Sunday, and your midterm paper, which is due on Sunday. Please keep in mind that there's a significant amount of work this week as we are at the midterm point in the course, and that it will take you a significant amount of time to complete that work, and you should get started early on that coursework rather than later in the course week. Discussion number 4 asks you to look at a prompt and analyze how you would make the decision if you were taking a rational or analogical approach to decision making. So pretend that you are a member of a long-standing policy committee at work. The committee has been asked to come up with suggestions for a system of peer performance evaluations to be instituted during the coming year. You realize that this is an important decision, and you also realize that your committee has a tendency to care more about getting along than maybe making a good decision. What steps could you take in the decision-making process to make sure that your group does not fall prey to groupthink theory and makes a high-quality decision? So what you'll do is you'll spend some time analyzing this and thinking about this and determining how would you go about this task if you were using a rational approach to decision-making or an analogical approach to decision-making. The answers can be found within this lecture as well as in the course reading this week. The midterm, as you know, is a company analysis paper. So we identified in week 2 one company that you wanted to cover and spend some time with learning about for the midterm. So I've attached the list here of the companies that you selected in week 2. What you're going to do now is you're going to take the company you selected and the research a little further by researching the organization described in order to conduct an analysis of that company and how they function from an organizational communication perspective. You will need at least 5 additional outside credible sources, magazine and newspaper articles, as well as the website, web-based sources, interviews, credible blogs, as well as scholarly sources to support your theories. And within that, you'll identify 2 to 3 important themes of the company's organizational communication perspectives that you found in conducting your analysis and finding research to support what you found about the company culture and organization and communication style utilized within that company. In those 2 to 3 themes, you will explain why they are important to the organizational culture and mission, as well as make some recommendations as to how the themes are discovered and your additional research could be used to maybe improve or change their communication patterns and structures within the organization. You will explain your recommendations, and your paper should include a solid introduction where you introduce the company, talk about why they excel at organizational culture and communication, as well as provide a preview statement. The body of your paper should provide a summary of an organization's culture and communication, a description of the 2 to 3 most important themes you found in your research of the company, as well as an argument as to why those themes are important. So I'm looking for you to not just tell me, oh, I found these 2 to 3 things about this company and I found them to be important, but also an argument that is telling me why, using outside sources. You should also include how they can improve their communication, as well as rationales and explanations for that, and describe and defend one of the organizational's communication models learned in the course. Your paper should include references to specific concepts or research findings, as well as your paper should have specific examples from the company to support the points that you're trying to make, as well as a conclusion which summarizes the main points of your paper. In total, you should have at least 7 outside sources. So 5 of them are credible sources that support the research that you found about how the company functions, and then 2 of those are scholarly sources. Your paper should also follow APA formatting and be at least 6 to 8 pages within content, not including your reference page or your title page. So in a nutshell, I'm asking you to conduct an analysis. If you chose Twitter or Warby Parker for your company, go online and find out as much as you can about the organizational structure. Every company selected on the list has been named as a Forbes top company to work for and a top company company and having or corporate culture that is desired by most companies in the US. So they're on that list for a reason. You should be able to find information about them, what their work style is like, what their communication style is like, what their expectation is for their employees, and understand and be able to analyze how they are organizationally sound in their communication processes. And with that, you'll include all the points made in the prompt for the paper, as well as making some on your own. If you have any questions with that, let me know early in the week, as this is due on Sunday, and we can chat about that if you have any questions or me from those perspectives. I wanted to spend some time looking at symbolic convergence theory. Now, symbolic convergence theory is a communication theory that was developed primarily by Ernest Borman. Cragen and Shields were also part of his development of the theory. However, it was developed by Borman, where they wanted to see how people share common fantasies that they may experience in the workplace or in their communicative settings. These collections of individuals are transformed in cohesive groups. So it looks at how we dramatize messages and how we become groups of people by expressed interpretations and interests of events that of here and now that have created groups and such. So it really considers how individuals and groups come to share their reality through communication and what their reality is of that particular place, as well as individual images of reality being guided by stories reflecting how things are believed to be. Stories or fantasy themes are created in symbolic interactions within small groups. There's a valid point that conversations create and sustain shared narratives for a group that constitutes their reality. So from a rhetorical perspective, it is the composite vision for a group created by its particular formulation of characters, plots, actions, and sectioning agents is often the drama the group sees playing out as its reality. So what is this theory telling us in a nutshell? It's telling us that symbolically we converge with one another based off of conversations we have that create and sustain stories for a particular group we subscribe to. We all subscribe to many groups. Your work, you have your work group with your friends and your coworkers that you chat with, and maybe you sit there and you talk about how you may not like things or you do like things, and those stories and the conversations you have create a narrative of what it's like, and that creates your reality of what work is like based off of that narrative. Same thing with maybe if you have a bunch of friends of, you're a parent and you have a bunch of friends that you communicate with and you share your parenting stories. It creates a narrative and constitutes your reality of what that's like to be a parent. So as we move through groups, we create our reality based off of what that group purports or argues it to be based off of what we have. So dramatizing messages are our expressed interpretations of events, and that becomes our reality from that. So this is utilized a lot in organizational communication because organizations tend to section themselves off or silo themselves off into groups, and how those groups create their reality can outplay and show what their reality is based off of the stories they're telling each other. The next theory we brought in is groupthink. Groupthink was based on the initial research conducted by Irving Janis. He was a research psychologist that really spent a lot of time looking at how groups interact. The practice of thinking or decision making from a group perspective in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility comes from groupthink. Groupthink was based off of a psychological phenomenon that occurs within a group of people in which the desire for harmony or conformity in the group results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome. Group members try to minimize conflict and reach a consensus decision without critical evaluation of alternative viewpoints by actively suppressing dissenting viewpoints and by isolating themselves from outside influences. So as we look at groupthink, we can see that groupthink requires individuals to avoid raising controversial issues or alternative solutions, and there's a loss of individual creativity and independent thinking. The dysfunctional group dynamics of the in-group procedures and an illusion of vulnerability, as well as an inflated certainty that the right decision has been made, can happen. Thus, the in-group significantly overrates its own ability in decision-making and significantly underrates its ability of its opponents, the out-group. Furthermore, groupthink can produce dehumanizing actions against the out-group. Antecedent factors such as group cohesion, faulty group structure, and situational context play into the likelihood of whether or not groupthink will impact the decision-making process. It's important to know groupthink is a construct of social psychology that has extensive reach and influences the fields of communication study. It's important to know that groupthink sometimes is stated to occur more broadly within natural groups within community, for example, to explain the lifelong mindsets of political views in the U.S. and to purport the beliefs of teamwork versus working in solitude. But the conformity of viewpoints of a group does not mainly involve deliberate group decision-making and might be better explained by the collective confirmation bias of individual group members themselves. Essentially, in a nutshell, groupthink is a phenomenon where people tend to conform with group decisions to avoid feeling as an outcast, leading to errors in the decision-making process. So if I don't agree really with what we're going to do as a group, but I consent to say, okay, that's fine, for whatever reason, that may be a bad idea. Now, if the idea or the decision of the group is positive, then that's not a problem. But it tells you that people oftentimes make a decision as to avoid feeling like an outcast in a group. They decide to go with the majority of the group, so that way that they are still considered to be part of the in-group or part of whatever it may be that they want to be a part of. So it's really, really, really important to see how this plays a role into organizational communication as well as company cultures and things of that nature. The next thing we're going to look at is rational decision-making model. It's also known as rational planning models, developed by Nigel Taylor. There's 5 steps to rational decision-making. I've put a graphic in here for you to take a look at. It's important that as we look at the steps, it's very important that we verify, define, and detail the problem. So make sure we understand what the problem is. This step includes recognizing the problem, defining an initial solution, and starting points for primary analysis. The next thing we need to do is identify alternative plans and policies. Make sure that we spend some time really looking at analyzing the situation and understanding how this develops and how we look at many different options. Once we've analyzed and we've gathered information to understand what's going on, we then develop options. After we develop options, we look at all the potential solutions there may be. We look at seeing what's the best way to go about this, how we can look at generating this from a better perspective, and then the next thing we do is we evaluate options. So we developed our options, we evaluate how great they'll be, and then we select our alternatives. And we usually rank the alternatives to determine, okay, if we can't go with option 1, then option 2 is the next best, and so on and so forth. Once we've done all of that, we act on the decision. So it's a model we use to make rational decisions rather than thinking irrationally and being able to determine what's the best way to arrive at a solution for a given problem or situation within a company. It's very important that you keep that in mind as we move through the course content. In addition, like I mentioned, we are on week 4. We're reading chapters 8. We're watching 4 videos related to course content, completing discussion board number 4. That's due on Friday, as well as discussion board number 4 that has reply posts due on Sunday, and completing the midterm paper by Sunday. So to recap, discussion board number 4 is due on Friday with replies due on Sunday, and the midterm paper is due no later than Sunday as well. If you have any questions, let me know. I look forward to reaching out with you today and this week, and look forward to our interactions. Again, all grades will be updated by Friday, and if you have anything that you need me to cover, just email me or set schedule time to meet. God bless.